suffer either. Orders for custom gates poured in, many specifically requesting the same security system that caught the HOA bandit. I had to hire 2 assistants just to keep up with demand. 6 months later, at Margaret's sentencing, the courtroom was packed with her victims. Some had driven hundreds of miles to see justice served. When the judge read the verdict, 25 years federal time, no possibility of parole for 15. There was a collective exhale, as if everyone had been holding their breath for years. Margaret tried one last manipulation, claiming she was a victim of society, that HOAs were inherently corrupt, and she was just playing the game. The judge wasn't buying it. Ma'am, you systematically defrauded innocent people for over a decade. You showed no remorse, only regret at being caught. 25 years. As they led her away, she turned to look at me. For a moment, I thought she might say something dramatic. Instead, she just shook her head and muttered, "I should have gone after the guy with the pink flamingos instead." I still don't know what that meant, but I suspect somewhere out there is a homeowner with plastic flamingos who dodged a bullet. But the craziest part? 3 weeks later, I got a letter that made me realize this was bigger than just one crazy neighbor. Want to see what happened next? That video is already live. Click the top link on your screen and comment karma if you think Margaret got what she deserved. Subscribe with notifications on, because the 8 calls from HOAs across the country, all wanting to know the same thing.
A self-appointed fake HOA Karen called the cops on Sheriff Luke Manning's kids just for drawing with chalk on their own driveway. She'd spent months bullying neighbors with fake fines and threats, convinced no one could stop her. But Luke had quietly built the case that would turn the tables. Just wait until you hear how this showdown ended, and why justice finally prevailed. It was one of those rare, perfect mornings in Willow Creek Estates, the kind that made Sheriff Luke Manning grateful he'd moved his family here. The sun was out, the sky crisp and cloudless, and for once, his phone was silenced. No calls, no emergencies, just coffee on the porch, watching his 2 kids play. Emily, 9, was sprawled out on the warm driveway with a bucket of rainbow chalk. Next to her, 7-year-old Mason sketched what he proudly called a fire-breathing police dragon. Their giggles carried down the street, innocent and bright. It was a simple joy, one of those moments that remind a parent what life is really about. But across the street and behind her perfectly trimmed hedges, Janet Caldwell watched with a deepening scowl. Janet had appointed herself guardian of the neighborhood after the HOA's board dissolved in a bitter legal fight 2 years ago. The community had voted to disband the HOA, tired of the endless fines, restrictions. But Janet refused to let go. Clipboard in hand, phone always at the ready, she spent her days patrolling the block, convinced it was her duty to uphold standards. Neighbors tolerated her, barely. Some had started calling her fake HOA Karen behind closed doors. This morning, the sight of 2 children drawing on their own driveway was apparently more than she could take. Without warning, Janet stormed across the street, her shoes clacking on the pavement. "You are vandalizing public property," she shrieked, voice sharp enough to startle Emily mid-stroke. "This is a violation!" Luke looked up from his coffee, blinking. He set the mug down and stood. Calmly, he stepped off the porch, posture relaxed but firm. "Morning, Janet. They're drawing on our driveway," he said evenly. "It'll wash off when it rains." But Janet was beyond reason. Face flushed, she whipped out her phone and punched in 3 numbers. "Yes, 911, she began, voice loud and theatrical. "I need police here now. There are unsupervised children defacing the street. I demand action." Luke's eyes narrowed. He took a slow breath, watching the scene unfold like a slow-motion movie he couldn't pause. This wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. This was a false emergency call about 2 children playing at home. Across the yard, Mason hugged his chalk bucket, eyes wide. Emily clutched her drawing, confused. And from the corner of his vision, Luke caught it. Janet had started recording the scene on her phone as well, narrating loudly about lawless behavior and parental neglect. For a beat, Luke just stood there, stunned. Must this really happen? Then came the voice from Janet's phone speaker. "Units are on their way." Luke exhaled slowly. So it was official. An actual police dispatch was now in motion, all because his kids had dared to draw dragons and flowers on their driveway. It didn't take long. Within minutes, the sound of 2 squad cars rolled down the quiet street. Lights flashing, no sirens, but still enough to draw curious glances from behind curtains and porch railings. Deputies Taylor and Grant, both seasoned officers from Luke's own department, stepped out, looking more than a little puzzled. The dispatch had listed possible property destruction and unsupervised minors, hardly the call that typically warranted an emergency response. Before they could even approach the house, Janet launched herself toward them, waving her phone wildly. "There, those kids," she shouted, pointing an accusatory finger at Emily and Mason, who were now clutching each other nervously on the front steps. "I told you this house is a problem. I demand you cite the parents and clean this mess up." Taylor's brows lifted in quiet disbelief. He exchanged a look with Grant, one that spoke volumes. Luke stood a few feet away, arms crossed. He had remained silent until now, watching Janet's performance, with a mix of restraint and rising disgust. Taylor finally addressed her, his voice cool and professional. "Ma'am, you reported a crime that doesn't exist," he said flatly. "That is their private driveway. No violation has occurred." For a moment, you could almost hear the click of a mental switch flipping in Janet's mind. Her eyes widened. Her voice rose another octave. "Don't you dare cover for them," she hissed. "I know the sheriff here is useless. Someone has to uphold community standards." That was it. The last straw. Luke stepped forward, slow and deliberate. He drew his badge from his pocket and held it out for all to see. "I think it's time we cleared something up," he said evenly, voice carrying just enough steel. "Sheriff Luke Manning, and those," he gestured toward his kids, "are my children." The effect was immediate. The air seemed to freeze. Janet's mouth opened and closed again. Her jaw worked uselessly as if trying to catch up with what had just been revealed. Taylor and Grant both stood at respectful attention, waiting. But if Luke had expected her to back down, he underestimated the depth of Janet's conviction. "I don't care who you are," she shot back, her face flushed deep red now. "You need to enforce the HOA rules. I will press charges if you don't." Luke's patience, honed by years in uniform, was nearing its end. But beneath the visible absurdity, something darker tugged.
Have you ever wondered why even a slight injury to your testicles causes you deadly pain? When any part of your body gets injured, the nerves present in that part, send signals to the brain.
So there are a lot of nerves in this. There's the ilioinguinal, the general-femoral, and pudendal nerves, which innervate this with thousands of nerve endings.
But only we boys know how terrible the pain is in the testicles. Most of our body is made up of bones and muscles which absorb any impact on your body. That's why we feel less pain in this parts.
So there's no bone or muscle protection in this area to help you out, unlike other parts of the body. So it's
There are 70 acres of hills, pines, and stubborn silence between me and the nearest Starbucks, and I plan to keep it that way. My name's Luke Mills. I'm 38, retired from the city's energy department, and allergic to bureaucracy. After 2 decades of squeezing logic into public infrastructure, I finally had enough of endless meetings and clueless supervisors. I took my severance